welcome back. This is the Blonde Skeleton, Sean, and this is the Boneyard. And this is Little Pink Houses Part 2. So next up we're going to be putting a roof on these things, or at least cutting out the roof for these things. The next step is going to be to texture this, really. Which I think there have been like thousands of videos out there for texturing, so just like go find one of those. I'm not going to have anything new or interesting to add to that other than just go find somebody who does it well and check it out. Good stuff. It's pretty not complicated, so I'd say go do that. But we're going to add a roof to this because one of the questions I get a lot is how do I get like my curves on my roof? Which you'll watch this and then you'll go back to the previous to the first video where we do shingles, so you can see how I overlay everything on top of that to make it work. My dog is sniffing the camera right now. He's pretty adorable, but shaking the hell out of it. So thanks, Bo. Thanks, buddy. He's cute. All right, so I'm going to be showing you how to do this. Okay, so the first thing that I do, you may be able to see through the video that I've already gotten some of I've already traced this out and done the first part of the roof, but this is the shape that we end up with in the end. So we're looking for kind of like a curved a circle, or a circle. This is not a circle. This is a rectangle with concave edges, right? So that gives us kind of this sail shape that's going to go on the side of the house to give us a nice curved rooftop. But the way that I do that is I take the flat side. If I've got a gable on it, we obviously can't use that side for this. So I lay down the flat side and I drop it down just about 1/4 of an inch or so from the top edge, so that I have a nice distance to curve. And I give myself plenty of room on the sides to have a nice overhang on this, so we can have some nice deep eaves on this, because I think it's easier to do deep architectural details like beams and whatnot if you have a nice deep eave, or soffit, I guess is what it's called. So I'm going to go out probably about 1/2 inch on either side and just mark it, and then decide kind of where I want it to end on the bottom and just put little dots there. And then I'm just going to connect the dots. I'm going to use, see this bone right here on your wrist? That bad boy makes an excellent pivot point. So what I like to do is I like to put my wrist on the counter and use, sorry, not this one, this one right here. This one right here. This bone is really good for using as a pivot point when you're trying to draw circles. So if you don't have a compass or just want to do a decent short arc, this is a great way to do it. Using a compass for an arc this shallow would be really hard, because you're talking like a circle that's probably a 2-foot radius to get an arc that shallow. But we don't want to do that necessarily. So I use this and just use that bone as a pivot point, and then just draw this line like so, and just go over it a few times until I get an arc that I think is acceptable. And then I do the same thing on the top and the side and the bottom, so that I get a nice shape on the piece of chipboard that looks like this. And this is just regular 16th inch chipboard. If you want to find this, go to Wylock, his videos. He actually has an Amazon page that he gets a little bit of money every time that people buy from his page, and I'd just say go support him, because he's an amazing crafter, and actually introduced me to this stuff. So so here we go. We have this. I'm just going to cut it out. Sometimes I use a razor, sometimes I use my awesome scissors. It just depends on what kind of mood I'm in. The razor is going to give me a nice clean edge, a nice clean steady cut. The scissors are sometimes just easier to deal with. So whoops, see, that's what I mean. If you're not careful, then you're just going to slice right through your work. But that's okay, because we actually need to chop a portion of this out for the gable anyway. So I'm just going to cut on this curve. But you see, that just goes to show that everybody screws up once in a while. And I screw up a lot, so if I continue to screw up, maybe I'll screw up enough that you don't have to, and then we'll all be happy, right? No, that's not the way it works. But if I do screw up, I don't get too sweaty about it, you know what I mean? I try not to freak out too much about it, because this is just crafting, man. This is just crafting. It is a very zen activity, and if you get upset about it, then, well, you're putting too much importance into the little things, right? This sort of thing, just roll with it, man. You're gonna find that that you can either cover it up with detail work, or you can turn it into a feature on the piece, and that's always really, really cool. You know, I have several pieces that I've screwed up in ways that I thought was, you know, going to ruin the piece, that ended up being, you know, just really interesting features. So, so here we go. Now I have this piece, and if I hadn't already cut out, you know, if this hadn't been the second piece, what I would do then is just trace it straight onto the cardstock, and cut out an identical piece so that I have two identical halves of a roof. So these things are going to get glued to the side of our roof like so. And I use this curve to kind of help me find it. This curve is where the peak of the roof is going to be. And then I put that just a little bit above the roof and glue that sucker down. So the next trick here is going to be to cut around this gable, and that's actually kind of tricky. It requires some math, and I'm not great at math. So, so here's what I do instead. I decide where the center of this peak is going to be. Oops, I got to make sure I get the right side of this, otherwise these aren't going to match up. I decide where the center of my peak is going to be, right? And that's going to be right about here, okay? So I've marked that. That's where the center of this peak is going to be relative to this, right? You could just measure it, right? The way to do that would be to measure it on this one. You just take this thing, make sure you have equal sides so that you don't have one side that's deeper than the other and make it look a little asymmetrical and weird, okay? And you could just draw a line here and draw a line here. And then you're going to take something like this lovely little square here. And what I would do is measure from there to the peak, which is 1.5 inches. So I'm going to measure from this line here to 1.5 inches and mark that. And again, we have the peak. And the peak is going to be in the same place for both of these. So, so we can use that. Okay, so I have these marks. I have the ends where the roof will end. Oh, let me show you in the light. We have the lines where the roof will end, and then we have this little dot here where the peak of the roof is going to be. So that's half the battle right there. The next thing we need to do is decide where the bottom of the roof is going to occur. Whoops! And we're going to throw a little pink house all over the place because I am a butterfingers. Okay, so we're going to line this back up. We're going to pinch it together. I'm just going to take my pencil and slide it right underneath here where the foam meets the roof. And I'm just going to draw a line. And it's going to be crooked, and it's going to be weird, and it's going to be funky, right? It's not a perfect line, but it kind of gives me a baseline where the bottom of that roof edge is going to be. And then I just square it up with the edge so that I have a nice consistent line going all the way across, right? So I know that's where that roof line is going to end up. And if it's nice and square with this line, then we have a nice pretty square angle here that I know is going to give us some pretty even measurements. So then what I do, our gable is not all the way to the edge of the roof. So what I want to do is measure out from there to see how far out that is. And it's got some paint on it somehow, so I'm going to scrape that off so I can actually see what I'm doing here. And this is 3/16. So I'm going to go in 3/16 of an inch from here. Mark that. And that's going to be the outside edge of our triangle, right? So then I'm going to measure the base of our triangle. And that's going to be 2.5 inches. And I'm going to go 2.5 inches from that mark. So 2.5 inches from that mark out to here. I know triangles are complex. Relax, I suck at math. I got to do this visually. Okay, so now we have 3 points of our triangle. This one is not the top of the triangle necessarily. That's just where this peak lines up with the top of the roof. So we actually need to measure down from here. I'm gonna try and grab this with 2 hands so I can be steady. That is 1/4 of an inch. We're gonna do that right on this line. Measure down 1/4 of an inch. I was really close, within a 1/16 of an inch. And that is our new peak. So then we're just gonna connect these dots, right? We're gonna go from here and draw a line from here to here. Okay, and the same on the other side. Woohoo! There we go. And now we have a nice template to cut out for our gable. Okay, so we're just gonna chop that sucker out. Oh, this right here is just a dollar store razor blade. I literally got 3 of these at the dollar store, and they're great for little jobs that I don't want to use my big DeWalt for. I'm just a fan of DeWalt. I love them. They're so good. But if I don't want to use my big DeWalt razor, I just use these little ones. They're fantastic. The blades don't last very long because they're not super good steel, but for $1, I mean, what do you want from me? Jesus. This is brilliant. Okay, cuts just fine. Look at this. That's all I need. I just need to cut some stuff. Quit judging. Quit judging my dollar store find. All right. So there we go. Now we have a really crazy peaked roof here that fits right over the top of our gable. And then the other half gets glued on to the other side just like this. Okay, so when we go to attach these, I want to kind of press them together and glue them so that they have a nice curve toward the center as well. And what that does is it gives me another degree of curvature, another dimension of curvature that just adds to the character of the piece. So you'll see that that these kind of piece together just like that. So I really love how these things come together and how easy they are to build. The key really is this solid core foundation. Without that, none of this would really even be practical, you know? So that's it for the roof. I'll go ahead and post this one, and the next video is going to be about making doors and windows for these pieces, which I actually make out of clay. So I take Sculpey clay and I sculpt them, so I'll show you how I do that, and then I mold them and then cast multiple versions of the same door. So I'll show you how I do that in the next video. So hope to enjoy, and we'll see you in part 3.